the Warrior, and the Wizard. Lillian was a beautiful red-haired elf warrior who was always up for a good fight. She was strong and brave, and her fiery hair always made her stand out in a crowd. One day, Lillian was out on a routine patrol when she spotted a group of goblins in the distance. She knew that this was trouble, and she quickly ran back to camp to warn her fellow warriors. Lillian's warning came just in time, and the warriors were able to prepare for the goblin attack. However, they were greatly outnumbered and outmatched. The goblins quickly began to pick off the warriors one by one, and soon it was clear that they were losing the battle. Lillian fought bravely against the goblins, but eventually she was the last one standing. It was only a matter of time before the goblins would take her down. She knew that she had to escape if she wanted to live, so she turned and ran. The goblins chased after her, but she was a fast runner, and she was able to lose them in the woods. Lillian was heartbroken over the loss of her friends. She had never seen such a brutal battle, and she didn't know how to deal with the aftermath. She walked back to camp in a daze, her mind filled with the images of her friends being slaughtered. When she got back to camp, she saw that it had been completely destroyed. There was no sign of any survivors. Lillian collapsed to the ground in grief, wondering what she was going to do now. She knew that she couldn't stay in this place any longer. It wasn't safe. She had to find someplace else to go, someplace where she could start over. Lillian packed up her belongings and set off into the wilderness, not knowing where she was going or what she would find. Lillian was walking through the forest, trying to find her way, when she suddenly heard someone calling her name. She stopped and looked around, but she couldn't see anyone. She was about to keep walking when she heard the voice again. This time, she followed the sound and came to a clearing where she saw an elderly man sitting on a stump. He had a long white beard and he was wearing a pointy hat. "Hello there, young lady," the man said. "My name is Arcturus. I'm a wizard." Lillian was surprised to see a real wizard. She had only ever read about them in stories. "Hello, Arcturus," she said. "I'm Lillian, and I'm lost." "I can see that," Arcturus said. "But don't worry, I'm here to help you. Come with me, and I'll take you to safety." Lillian hesitated for a moment, but she decided that she could trust the wizard. She didn't have anywhere else to go after all. So she went with Arcturus, and he led her out of the forest. Arcturus took her to a small cottage in the middle of a clearing. He said that this was his home, and she could stay with him until she figured out what she wanted to do. Lillian was grateful for the wizard's help. She liked Arcturus, and she felt safe with him. She decided to stay with him for a while and see what the future held for her. Lillian settled in and began to rebuild her life. She helped the wizard with his work, and he taught her everything he knew about magic. She soon became his apprentice, and they developed a strong bond. Lillian was happy living with Arcturus, but she always felt like something was missing. She longed for adventure and excitement. She wanted to explore the world and see new things. One day, Lillian mustered up the courage to talk to Arcturus about her feelings. "I appreciate everything you've done for me, Arcturus," she said, "but I can't help but feel like I'm missing something." "I know what you mean, Lillian," the wizard said. "I felt the same way when I was your age. I wanted to see the world and have adventures, but I was afraid to leave my home." "What did you do?" Lillian asked. "I took a leap of faith," Arcturus said. "I left my home and set out into the world, and it was the best decision I ever made." Lillian thought about the wizard's words. He was right. She needed to take a leap of faith. She needed to leave her comfort zone and see what the world had to offer, though it pained her to do so since she had come to love her wizard master. The next day, Lillian said goodbye to Arcturus and set out on her own. She had no idea where she was going, but she was excited for the adventure. Lillian made her way to the nearest village and started asking around for paid adventures. She was directed to the local tavern, so she went there to see if she could join a quest. Lillian entered the tavern and immediately felt out of place. She had never been in a place like this before. It was noisy and filled with rowdy people. She didn't see any quests being advertised, so she went up to the bar and asked the bartender if he knew of any. "You might want to try the quest board over there," he said, pointing to a large board on the wall, "but I wouldn't recommend it. You look like you're too good for that kind of work." Lillian thanked the bartender and went over to the quest board. Lillian scanned the quest board, her eyes widening at the various tasks that were being advertised. She saw everything from simple fetch quests to hunting down dangerous monsters. She didn't see anything that she felt like she was qualified to do, but she figured she could at least try. She was about to sign up for a fetch quest when she felt someone grab her from behind. She yelped in surprise as she was pulled into a secluded corner of the tavern. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded, trying to wriggle free from the person's grasp. "I saw you looking at the quest board, and I thought you might be interested in joining my party," the person said. Lillian quickly cast a spell to defend herself, creating a barrier of magical energy around her. The person stumbled back, released from her grasp. She took the opportunity to get a better look at her attacker. He was a human warrior, and he was clearly drunk. He had a leering grin on his face, and his eyes were filled with lust. "I want you, baby," the warrior said, taking a step towards her. She quickly cast another spell, this one sending the warrior flying across the room. He hit the wall with a thud and collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The tavern erupted into chaos at the sight of the unconscious warrior. The other patrons started to back away from Lillian, clearly afraid of her. A group of soldiers quickly surrounded her, their hands on their weapons. "What did you do to him?" one of them demanded. "I was defending myself," Lillian said defiantly. "You're going to have to come with us," another soldier said. "You're not welcome here anymore." Lillian had no choice but to go with the soldiers. There were too many of them to fight alone, and besides they hadn't done anything to harm her. They escorted her out of the tavern and told her never to come back. She was infuriated at the way she had been treated. She had done nothing wrong, and yet she had been kicked out and branded as a criminal. She was so wrapped up in her own thoughts that she didn't hear the footsteps of the man approaching her until he was right behind her. "Hey, wait up," he said. Lillian turned to see who was speaking to her. He was a human warrior, and he looked to be a few years older than she was. He was handsome, in a rugged sort of way. "What do you want?" she asked, crossing her arms. The warrior grinned. "I saw what happened back there," he said. "That was some impressive magic." "So what if it was?" Lillian asked. "It's not like I asked for his help." "True, but I could use someone like you in my party," the warrior said. "I could use a powerful mage like you." Lillian was taken aback by the warrior's words. She had never been asked to join a party before, let alone one that needed her help. "Why would you need me?" she asked. "I'm going on a quest to kill a cave troll," the warrior said, "and I could use all the help I can get." "So what's the pay?" Lillian asked. "Well, if we kill the troll, we'll split its treasure," the warrior said. Lillian thought about the warrior's offer for a moment. Going on a quest with him could be dangerous, but it could also be exciting. And if they were successful, she could end up with a share of the troll's treasure. "All right, I'm in," she said. The warrior grinned. "Excellent," he said. "My name is Arlo, by the way." "I'm Lillian," she said. "It's nice to meet you, Lillian," Arlo said. "Now let's go kill us a troll." Lillian followed Arlo as he led them into the forest. She was excited for the adventure that awaited them, and she was eager to test her skills against the troll. They had been walking for hours when they finally came to the troll's cave. Arlo cautiously approached the cave, his hand on his sword. Lillian followed close behind him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been this close to a creature like this before, and she was completely unprepared for what she was about to face. Arlo peered into the darkness of the cave, trying to see if the troll was inside. It was difficult to see anything, but he thought he could make out a large, hulking figure in the back of the cave. He turned to Lillian and whispered, "I'm going in." Before Lillian could protest, Arlo charged into the cave, brandishing his sword. Lillian hesitated for a moment before following him. They hadn't gone more than a few steps when they heard a loud, guttural growl emanating from the darkness. The troll was awake, and it was angry. Arlo charged towards the sound, swinging his sword wildly. The troll easily dodged his attacks and counterattacked with its own. Arlo was no match for the creature, and it quickly knocked him to the ground. Lillian watched in horror as the troll raised its fist to deliver the finishing blow. She knew that Arlo was going to die if she didn't do something. She gathered her courage and stepped forward. "Stop," she yelled. The troll turned to look at her, its eyes filled with rage. "Leave him alone," she demanded. The troll took a step towards her, its fist still raised. Lillian's heart was pounding in her chest, but she stood her ground. She gathered her magic and prepared to defend herself. The troll swung its fist at her, but she quickly erected a barrier of magical energy. The troll's fist collided with the barrier, and it was sent flying backwards. Lillian quickly erected a barrier of magical energy around herself and Arlo. The troll rolled in frustration and began to pound on the barrier, trying to break through. Lillian knew that she couldn't keep the barrier up forever. She had to think of something fast. She turned to Arlo, who was lying on the ground in a daze. "Arlo, get up," she yelled. He slowly staggered to his feet, clearly still disoriented from the troll's attack. "We have to fight," Lillian said. Arlo nodded and drew his sword. The troll was still pounding on the barrier, but it was beginning to weaken. Lillian knew that she had to act fast. She gathered her magic and formed a ball of fire in her hand. The troll saw the ball of fire and stepped back, clearly afraid of it. Lillian took the opportunity to strike. She hurled the ball of fire at the troll, and it exploded on impact. The troll rolled in pain and staggered backwards. Arlo took the opportunity to attack. He ran towards the troll and plunged his sword into its side. The troll let out a final roar and then collapsed to the ground dead. Lillian and Arlo stood there for a moment, trying to catch their breath. They had killed the troll, but it had been a close call. "Are you all right?" Lillian asked. Arlo nodded. "I'm fine," he said. "You?" "I'm all right," she said. "That was amazing what you did." "Thank you," Arlo said, "but I couldn't have done it without you." Lillian smiled. "Let's see what the troll has been hoarding," she said. They began to search the troll's cave for its treasure. It didn't take long to find, as the troll had been hoarding everything it could get its hands on. There was gold, jewels, and even weapons and armor. Lillian and Arlo quickly filled their packs with as much treasure as they could carry. They knew that they had struck it lucky, and they didn't want to waste any time. "We should get back to town and sell this stuff," Arlo said. Lillian nodded in agreement. They made their way back to town and went to the local merchant. The merchant's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw the treasure that Lillian and Arlo had brought him. He quickly began to bargain with them, trying to get them to sell him the treasure for less than it was worth. Lillian and Arlo negotiated with the merchant for a while, but eventually they agreed on a price that they were both happy with. The merchant paid them and then began to sort through the treasure, eager to see what he had just purchased. Lillian and Arlo went to the local inn and got themselves a room. The sun was setting, casting a warm, orange glow over the landscape. Lillian and Arlo sat in the inn, enjoying a meal and a well-earned drink. "That was quite the adventure," Arlo said. "It certainly was," Lillian agreed. "I'm just glad it's over." "Me too," Arlo said. "I don't know about you, but I could use a good night's sleep." Lillian nodded. "I think that's a good idea," she said. They finished their meal and then retired to their room, but neither of them were thinking about sleep. The ale had given them other ideas. Lillian and Arlo undressed each other, their hands trembling with anticipation. They had been thinking about this moment ever since they had met, and they could barely contain themselves any longer. Arlo kissed Lillian passionately, his hands exploring her body and her fire-red hair. She moaned in pleasure as his hands brushed against her. She wanted him now, and she wouldn't wait any longer. She pulled him towards the bed and pushed him down onto it. She straddled him, her eyes shining with desire. She slowly sunk down onto him, both of them gasping in pleasure. They began to move together, their bodies intertwined. The first time Lillian climaxed, she screamed out in ecstasy. Arlo followed shortly afterwards, pulling her close as they rode out the waves of pleasure together. They lay in each other's arms afterwards, both of them exhausted from the intensity of their lovemaking. "That was amazing," Lillian whispered. "It certainly was," Arlo agreed. Arlo smiled at Lillian. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "What is it?" she asked. Arlo muttered a few words, and to Lillian's amazement his form began to change into that of her wizard master, Arcturus. "By the gods," she ejected, sitting up quickly in bed, startled. Arcturus looked at Lillian, his eyes filled with love and concern. "Lillian, I need to tell you something," he said. "I'm not sure how you're going to react, but I need to say it anyway." "What is it?" she asked, still shaken. "I love you, Lillian," Arcturus said. "I think I've loved you since the day we met." Lillian was taken aback by the wizard's confession. She had no idea Arcturus cared for her in that way, but she realized that she had been foolish not to see it sooner. "I'm sorry if I'm too old for you," Arcturus said, his eyes filled with concern. "I know that you're young, and you have your whole life ahead of you. I don't want to hold you back." "Arcturus, I love you too," Lillian said, "and I don't care how old you are. I want to be with you." Arcturus let out a sigh of relief and pulled Lillian into a hug. "Thank you for understanding," he said. "I was so afraid that you would reject me." "I could never reject you," Lillian said. "I love you, no matter what." After that, Arcturus and Lillian spent many years together chasing adventure, fortune, and fame. Eventually, the wizard's age caught up with him, and he could no longer go on any adventures. The two settled down in a small village, where Lillian became the village healer and Arcturus a renowned sage. In time, Arcturus died, old and fulfilled. Lillian never fell in love with another man again, choosing instead to remain in the village and protect its inhabitants with her sword, her magic, and her love.